What are the rules for students around turning on the cameras? And will students be reprimanded if they don't want their cameras on?
Great question, Jessica. With our students, so we utilize the cameras to help support our instructional approach in that remote setting. And so it's a resource to help with some of the modeling that's used with our curriculum. No, you wouldn't be reprimanded if you're not turning it on, but we purposely use it to help support you as you continue to grow.
I would say on DPSCD's part the same. It's really just a feature that can help students if they want to see each other, they want to be seen, or maybe to be clearly understood with their question, but no disciplinary action would be taken if the video is off. It's also an opportunity maybe when class initially starts to quickly show the face, only to confirm attendance. That's the only thing that I could say might be the reason, but no reason to keep it on the entire time.
Another question is, what is the most important info families should know as we start schools next week?
So that's a longer answer there, Jessica, because number one, I think it's really important to know that our schools have been planning for your return since June. And so we've been intentionally planning for what we call our COVID loss, right? So you haven't been in school since March. And we truly believe that in-person instruction is the best to help you to continue to grow. And so we've been planning for that since June. So just know that the plans that we have in place have been ongoing to help your development as we go into the beginning of the school year. The other thing to keep in mind is what we call giving yourself and your teachers and your parents grace. And what we mean by that is you've been dealing with a lot since this pandemic began. And so understand that we're taking all of that into account to help support you and the rest of our students as we return back to school.
So I would say there's obviously a lot to say, but I would say it's important for parents and students to know that grades are going to be issued if they took the online option. I think we did everything we could to continue education in the spring when the pandemic first hit. But I think a lot of students are thinking that in DPSCD, the experience is going to be similar to what it was like in March and throughout the spring. It's going to be different starting on Tuesday in that we're using the full curriculum online, that we're using face-to-face. The hours, the school hours are the same. Now, it doesn't mean you got to be in front of a computer the whole time, but we're going to have all our classes like we normally would, and grades are going to be issued. And that's very important for all students, but especially our high school students, because those grades will go on transcripts, and those grades matter regarding college and other opportunities. So I think that at a highlight level, that's probably what I would emphasize.
Can you talk about the schedules for schools and about how long students are on Zoom and why?
Yeah, so the way we've structured our what we call our remote learning plan, Jessica, is we have a combination of what we call synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And so what we mean by synchronous is that there's going to be specific times for you and the rest of your students to connect directly with the teacher to help you with your core content area. So ELA, math, science, and social studies. But then we also have what we call asynchronous content, where you don't necessarily have to be scheduled a time to complete some of the work or activities, but it is going to be expectations centered around completing those assignments. And those will be graded. Those will be a part of your growth as a student. And our teachers will use that information to help with what we're doing during that synchronous scheduled time to help support.
So the schedule for online will be the same as face-to-face. But when we think about screen time, let's say we're talking about a high school student and the class being 50 minutes long, the teacher will introduce the lesson for probably 20 minutes or 30 minutes. That could lead into a whole group discussion, or after the introduction of the lesson, then students would have time to work independently or maybe in groups while they're online. So although the schedule reflects the online schedule reflects what will happen face-to-face. It doesn't mean that the student will constantly be looking at a screen or listening to a teacher talk the entire time. The screen time will be to introduce the lesson, maybe ask questions, interact with peers, but not necessarily staring and working off a computer for 8 hours. You'll have independent time where you won't need the computer because you'll be able to do your independent work. And then for K-8, at the K-8 level, the reading block, for example, may be 2.5 hours, but it's not as if students will be looking at a computer for 2.5 hours. Again, they'll get an introductory lesson to the content and then have time to work in small groups or on iReady. Whatever you see in the schedule doesn't mean that you have to stare at a computer for that amount of time for online learning.
Can you tell us where we can find the schedules?
With our schools, our families can get those schedules directly from the main offices. Some sample schedules have been posted on the different schools' website, but your individual schedule is going to look a little bit different than another student in a different grade level. And so that schedule can be provided by the school's main office. And it'll outline exactly what your day is going to look like, how much time you'll spend in your ELA or math content area, if there's going to be specials offered and how that information is going to be provided to you. So all of that will be provided through the school's main office.
So students should be able to get their schedules through their schools. Either there will be a robocall sent out or a text message sent to parents in order to let them know that the schedules are available. You'll be able to see it through the parent portal. Every school is different about the timeline, but probably by today, no later than tomorrow, a message should be going out through the individual school that the schedules are available. And schools are also in DPSCD scheduling parent orientations or student orientations just to be able to navigate the schedule and the expectations for Tuesday if they're functioning online. I'm going to also send out an email to all students through the district email so that they also have additional information about Tuesday's startup online.
Will students be considered absent if they have technical issues?
No. So we've already set up protocols to ensure that, one, all of our students have access to physical devices and technology. We've also set up resources to help our families with access to actual internet, even including hotspots for those students that may need that. But then even if there's technology issues, as long as we know about them, you wouldn't be marked absent for that. And we'll figure out different ways to help support you along the way.
Same with DPSCD. All of our students will have the Connected Futures tablet or a loaner laptop. The Connected Futures devices have the embedded internet access. And then for those that are going to get donor laptops, so those are pre-K students, kindergarten students, and any newly enrolled students to DPSCD, then we're working with them on a hotspot. So there will be a number to call if there's technical issues with the device. I don't necessarily foresee a reason why there might be technical issues, but there might. You never know, to your question. I think it may be an absence, but you obviously would still have access to the content because it'll be online. And if it's an issue that continues, then the student or parent should contact the teacher, and we can always work through making sure that you get any assignments you missed due to technical difficulties. But I wouldn't stress out about that being an obstacle for you.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Jessica. We have a lot of questions actually from the audience. At this point, I think this is an important one because it feels like in part an enrollment question. But at this point, how many DPSCD schools will offer in person?
Yeah, so all schools are offering face-to-face. It just depends on the grade level and subject area. So there are schools where the majority of students and teachers are online, but even within that, there are some grade levels and subject areas that are still offering face-to-face. So that's probably better understood at the individual student or family level, because so let's say I'm a parent and I wanted face-to-face, then I know whether my school is able to offer that or not. But Crystal may have wanted online, and we're at the same school as a parent, so she wouldn't necessarily know what was offered face-to-face. So that's just generally the case. And I think it's important for all of our students and families to know that all of our schools are going to be open. They're all open at the minimum as learning centers. So even if you chose online learning, and let's say, for example, you're younger and families don't feel comfortable with you being home alone, and their work schedule doesn't allow them to be at home, then you can go to your enrolled school in the morning, come in, eat breakfast. You'll be in a classroom with an adult, or in a cafeteria or a media center. You can use your device that you were issued or a laptop at the school, log in, and then you'll go through your learning as if you were home through your certified teachers, but in the learning center. And there'll be an adult there that can answer any questions that you have. That's open to all of our students, even if you picked online. And then there are some face-to-face students who their teachers did pick the face-to-face option, so they'll get that subject face-to-face. But then for another subject, they may be accessing a teacher online. So with them being at the school, they can just log on and then stay at the school and access that subject area online. So it all depends on the individual student and school grade level subject area. But I think it's important for all students to know that the learning centers are available to all students, even if they're online. In addition, if you're an online student, you can still have access to breakfast and lunch at your school. So we'll give more details out about that, but it'll be similar to the grab and go structure where you'll come at about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and you'll be able to get both of your breakfast and your lunch in a bag.
And similarly, Christine, just really quick, with many of our schools, we offer the hybrid in-person, but then even our schools that are 100% remote, they are providing that in-person instructional support as needed for those students that need that additional support. Families can reach out to the schools directly to set up a schedule for that based on the needs, and those things are being provided as well.
How will students with IEPs that chose the virtual option receive their services? And this is an emphasis on special education. And then, have you received confirmed guidance from the Department of Education regarding standardized testing requirements for this year? If so, can you, so these are two different questions, sorry, but the standardized testing is also important. Can you elaborate on those expectations? So will we have standardized testing this year? And then how do students receive their services if they're special education and have chosen virtual?
When it comes to the standardized testing, so as of now, there is still the plan in place at the end of the year provide standardized testing. There hasn't been any guidance that I am aware of that's been provided that those standardized tests have been waived. So until we receive that information, our plan is to continue to plan for that standardized testing. But I think it's a bigger question when it comes back to the purpose around the standardized testing, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our students are learning as much as they can each year so they can continue to progress. And so our plan is to continue to plan for that eventuality, as well as look at how we're teaching our curriculum and assessing our students along the way to help support them with closing that gaps so they can be at or above grade level by the end of the year, which is the whole goal of the standardized test to begin with. When it comes to the special education question, so like I mentioned before, yes, our special education students will continue to receive support even if they are a virtual student. We have our special education teachers that are setting up their schedules to help support those students through the lens of the individual needs in their student individual education plans. And so every student has specific goals within their plans that our task is to make sure that they're reaching those goals and we're supporting that growth throughout the year. And so, yes, each individual student will continue to receive that support and schedules within the the school will be able to help support that.
We have the legal responsibility to meet the expectations of the individual education plan for students, whether they're online, they're facilitating learning online or face-to-face. And we're going to be committed to doing that with teachers and paras, whether they're working online or face-to-face. So that was a challenge last year. I think things will be smoother this year because the curriculum is accessible online. Our teachers are more familiar with Teams, and now we have Schoology, which is the platform to facilitate the learning. And so I think parents and students always need to be advocates for their children as far as those IEP requirements. And when things are not being met, then those issues need to be raised at the school level and even at the district level. I think the question was already answered. The state right now has not given any signs that there won't be state testing at the end of the year. As a district, we're required to implement interim assessments. So at the beginning of the year, all of our students, whether they're online or face-to-face, will take the iReady baseline test in reading and math, K through 8, and then a pre-PSAT or SAT test for 8th grade to 11th grade. And then those same assessments we use at the middle part of the year, and then at the end of the year, along with any state assessments that take place. SAT and PSAT testing will happen in the fall. That's required by the state. And unfortunately, that has to be a face-to-face test. So students will have to come into the building, and we'll obviously spread everyone out and maybe use all of our buildings, even the K-8 buildings, to ensure that students can social distance and take that test. But that is a follow-up from last year's spring test that wasn't administered. And that's going to be an important test for students, especially if they're juniors or seniors, in order to get a record of the SAT score for college purposes and scholarships. Although I should say, sorry, most colleges seem to be sympathetic with not requiring the SAT test. So I think that's important for our students to know. That was clearly the case for last year's graduates. There was conversation that would be applied to 2021 graduates as well, but that might depend on the actual institution, the college institution.
Thank you, Dr. Vitti, and thank you, Shawn, for being here today. Thank you all so much for being as thoughtful as you have been to make sure that we can still have some sort of school for our children, because it's so important. So thank you.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.